Welcome into College Football Smothered and Covered, episode 10 of the show. I really appreciate you guys checking us out. Please share the show if you haven't already. Please leave us some constructive criticism. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Rumble. I don't really care where it is. Just pay attention, just watch, and leave some comments. I'm here to cover college football 24/7, 365. Love being a part of this ecosystem along with Late Kick, Crain and Company. You'll hear from Jay Crain from Crain and Company coming up in a little bit. Michael Bratton, everybody that's in this ecosystem want to be a part of your college football viewing pleasure. Like I said, Jake Crain coming up here in about 10 minutes or so. Jake does a great job over at Crain and Company and Daily Wire. We'll talk to him. A reminder, this show brought to you by Coastal Vibe Vacations, 850-888-0515, coastalvibevacations.com. If you're looking to plan a vacation this summer on the panhandle of Florida, give Coastal Vibe a call. They do a great job specializing on Okaloosa Island between Destin and Fort Walton. 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom condos. They have you covered. Coastal Vibe Vacations, 850-888-0515 or coastalvibevacations.com. So let's talk a little bit about something that I'm very, very excited about, and that is Heisman Trophy odds. Now, when we talk about Heisman Trophy odds right now, we have to sort of view it as hype, right? We have to view it as the teams people like, historic performance. And look, a lot of these, and I've talked to odds makers about this, it's just all about buzz. It's how to create content. So let's create some content about it, right? This is Caesar Sportsbook. These are their Heisman Trophy odds right now. Carson Beck at plus 800. To me, that is very interesting because Carson Beck, from a statistical standpoint, came on in the middle of the season, but doesn't really have those video game stats. Can he have those video game stats in 2023? I don't know, maybe. He might be able to. I don't know if he necessarily needs those video game stats, though, because Georgia still is founded on the run. Yeah, they've been giving more and more responsibilities to their quarterbacks. You saw Stetson Bennett become more of a superstar. Obviously, he was a Heisman Trophy finalist, but you're not going to have those video game stats at Georgia. They're going to rely on defense. They're going to run the ball. They're going to work off play action. Yeah, they're going to be a little bit creative. They're going to crank up the tempo at certain times, but they don't live and die by the tempo. So I thought him being above Quinn Ewers was a little surprising to me because Texas's offense is founded on Quinn Ewers. It's based around Quinn Ewers. Steve Sarkisian is a quarterback guru. He gives his quarterback, whether it be at Texas, at Washington, at USC, wherever he's been, he puts it all on the quarterback's shoulders. And Quinn Ewers, we've seen, can handle that kind of success. That's what he does best, is handle the responsibilities given to him by a quarterback-driven coach in a quarterback-driven system. So it was surprising. It is surprising for me to see on Caesars that Carson Beck is ahead of Quinn Ewers in those Heisman Trophy odds. Now, getting down to the third most likely is Dillon Gabriel. Look, I'm not the biggest Dillon Gabriel guy. I think when you have to talk about Dillon Gabriel, you have to view him through the prism of where the hype came from. Coming from Mackenzie Milton's filling in for him at UCF, going to Oklahoma. And look, he did a fantastic job at Oklahoma, but is he a Heisman Trophy caliber player? I don't necessarily think so. And he's going to a team, Oregon, that is going to be in the Big Ten. What does that mean? How does he affect that? It's a more of a defensive-driven league in the Big Ten. I think he's going to make some mistakes. I like him. I think Dan Lanning's going to do a lot in terms of giving him responsibilities that he hasn't had throughout the course of his college football career. But is he Bo Nix? No, he's not. So to me, that was the most surprising, to see a guy like Dillon Gabriel. To me, we talk about hype, right? We talk about odds during this time of year. January, February, March, even through April, May, and June. It's all about buzz. It's all about name brand value and what you've done in the past as opposed to what you might do in the future, potentially if you're in a new system or in a new school or have a new coach or whatever. And Dillon Gabriel, to me, is the one that I just don't necessarily buy. Now, the one I do buy in terms of value. Look, let's just throw Jackson Dart out, right? Everybody knows how much of the how long I've been on the Jackson Dart hype train and how much I believe in Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin and Jackson Dart in that system. So the value's there. Number one in value, Jackson Dart plus 1,500. But let's eliminate him because I've talked about him ad nauseum on this. Nico Iamaleava at plus 1,700. I would take that value. And to me, Nico Iamaleava at 1,700 is a little surprising for a couple of reasons. One, we've seen him run. We saw him run in the bowl game, and he's really darn good at it. So if you're in that system like Hendon Hooker, that's already a good foundation with that Josh Heupel offense. That's a good start, right? But the question is he Joe Milton or is he not Joe Milton? And you better hope it's the latter. And I truly believe it is the latter because Joe Milton can't throw. He only has a fastball. He can't come in and throw a changeup. I said that before last season. Tennessee fans, you didn't like that. I think we saw that was the case in 2023. I buy Nico as a passer. Enough of a passer, right? I'm not saying he's going to win the Heisman Trophy, but at plus 1,700, I absolutely buy the value because I do think from a passing standpoint, he is closer to Hendon Hooker than he is to Joe Milton. I think that's where he will be. All right. So let's move it forward again. All right. What happens if he is? What happens if he is a really good but not elite passer? Then Tennessee might make the playoff. Tennessee might make the playoff if Nico is closer to Hendon than Joe Milton as a passer, because we know he can run. We know he can run. So when is the Heisman Trophy? What matters in terms of voting for the Heisman Trophy? What you did in the regular season plus a conference championship game, potentially, right? So if Tennessee doesn't go to a conference championship game, is that still enough? Yeah, I think it is for him to at least get to New York. You know he's going to have the stats. You know he's in a system that works wonders in terms of giving quarterbacks buzz, getting them attention. So if Tennessee is good enough to make the playoff without going to a conference championship game, or even if they're not, let's just say Tennessee's 9-3. All right? It's probably not going to make the playoff at 9-3. Maybe you do, probably not. But if Tennessee's 9-3 and Nico puts up 4,500 total yards, and I'm talking about maybe 3,500 and 1,000 or 4,500, whatever it is, right? If he puts up that kind, if he's in that ballpark, right? I think he's got a good chance of getting to New York. Maybe not as a top 3, but if they go to 5 or 6 based on where the natural line of delineation is, okay, great. So if you're talking about him as a New York caliber player, as a Heisman Trophy caliber player, to at least be in the discussion, did you take him at 1,700? I definitely would over Noah Fafita, Jalen Milroe, Will Howard. You know how much I don't like Will Howard. That is insane that he's plus 1,200, but that's neither here nor there. If you want to know my feelings on Will Howard, go watch like every other show that we've done in the short history of college football smothered and covered. You will see my thoughts on him. Garrett Nussmeier, plus 1,200. Absolutely, I would take Nico Iamaleava over Garrett Nussmeier. We already talked about Dillon Gabriel. So if you're talking right now about the value, it's Nico. It's Nico. So I think that is it. The high, and I don't necessarily love talking about odds in the offseason, especially in February, because like I said, they are more built on buzz, more built on hype, more built on drawing attention. And that's fine. But when I saw the Caesars Heisman Trophy odds come out, I was like, that's why we're talking about. I was like, dang, this is interesting. This is not what I thought it would be. And it goes back to something that I think I was asked about this on a radio show, and it is true. Where are the quarterbacks this year? Like in the past, we've known kind of who was going to be solid. Last year, we knew Penix was going to be solid. We knew Bo Nix was going to be solid. Like those were guys that you kind of look at and you're like, yeah, okay, I get it. JJ McCarthy, right? You know kind of who the superstars are going to be. And this year, you really don't. I mean, you know Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers, but it's sort of a mysterious year in terms of quarterbacks. So it's going to be fascinating to see how this whole thing works out. And Heisman Trophy odds, we'll see how they move, because I do think after spring practice, you might see some of these guys, not saying who, but you might see some of these guys moving around to different locations, which could vastly change how they're viewed in the eyes of Las Vegas. Reminder, college football smothered and covered is brought to you by Coastal Vibe Vacations. If you're looking for a vacation rental this summer, Okaloosa Island between Destin and Fort Walton Beach, coastalvibevacations.com, 850-888-0515, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom condos. They have you covered. Coastalvibevacations.com. Joined now by a very good friend. You know him, you love him. He is Jake Crain from Crain and Company on Daily Wire. Mr. Crain, it's a pleasure for you to be here. It's awesome to see you guys killing it on Daily Wire, and welcome in.
Well, first off, Barrett, thank you for coming on Crain and Company earlier today. Great stuff, and dude, congratulations. The new show's incredible. I knew it was going to be when you announced it. Really excited to watch you keep balling out and doing what you're doing, man. And the amount of mutual respect and love that not only myself but all three of us at Crain and Company have for you, man. And you're one of the best in the business. So honored to be part of the beginning of what's sure to be an absolute banger of a show. Smothered, covered, slaughtered, displayed, splattered, deliciousness. Love it.
I really appreciate it. It seems like only yesterday we were singing karaoke at Gabriel's. Dude. You know what? In Dallas this summer, I guess I got to get Blaine and Coney up there to sing with us.
Yeah, look, Cone can sing now. Cone can.
I know. I've seen on Instagram. He's
now.
Good,
now,
man.
My brother sounds like it's like one of those funny auditions at the beginning, like old school American Idol when they'd have the people who couldn't sing at all at the beginning. That's my brother. He's more of the dance move guy. But yeah, man, we got to do it.
Absolutely. So something, segue, that's what they call a tease in this business. Something that Kalen DeBoer's got to do is win at Alabama and win consistently after Nick Saban left. So I guess, this is first a 50,000-foot question with maybe a very complicated answer. What does the Alabama fan base in your mind need to see from Kalen DeBoer in year one just to sort of calm the nerves after the Nick Saban era?
Well, look, the expectation, and I've said this about a lot of places, but obviously Alabama has been on top of the mountain for a long time, or one of the multiple teams that have been on top of the mountain here recently. The expectation and the standard is not going to be lowered. He's going to be expected to win every game he plays in. Now, will reality be accepted? Two things can be true at once. The standard doesn't need to be lowered, but reality does have to be accepted. If he goes 9-3, and obviously depending on that 9-3, who are the three losses? Do you get in the playoff? And if you do get in the 12-team playoff, what do you do when you get there? But any loss is going to be deemed a disaster, and that's how it's going to be for anybody at Alabama when you're replacing the greatest of all time. But let's not forget, Nick Saban hadn't won a national championship in the last 3 years. So it's not like you're coming off, what Kirby Smart has done, or even what Jim Harbaugh has done here recently, but they expect national championships in Tuscaloosa. So I'll continue to say that I think Kalen DeBoer's tenure will be defined by obviously the patience that the fan base gives them, which fan is short for fanatical, so you're not going to get a lot of that. But it will be defined by the level of freak out that happens the first time something inevitably goes wrong. When Nick Saban would lose, maybe earlier in the year, which he didn't do a lot, but you lose to Texas, he had some leeway, right? For two reasons. One, you've already won all these championships. And you've built up that equity, that rapport with the fan base, and you always fixed it. With Nick Saban, you knew it would get fixed. Hell, they took a lacrosse player down to South Florida and beat him. And everybody thought, all right, here we go. Bama's on the raft going down the river, just the old Eskimo person. Let's send him off into the night. And what does Nick Saban do? Makes a run all the way to the playoff, adjusts his offense. So, look, the standard's not going to be lowered, but the Alabama fans need to realize nobody is going to be Nick Saban, right? That doesn't mean you accept losing, but the first time it inevitably goes wrong, how big is the freak out?
Yeah, and I think that's the one thing is the expectations, I think, are lowered right now. But yeah, how big is the freak out and how long will that last? And I think a lot of that, Jake, depends on Jalen Milroe and the quarterback position, because you look at what Kalen did well at Washington and what Michael Penix did well, it was the deep ball. That's what they did. That's how they succeeded. But Michael Penix was also great everywhere else. Jalen Milroe has not been great everywhere else. He can throw the deep ball, but intermediate, short routes, that's been sort of his weakness. What do you make? Do you think Jalen Milroe not only can succeed in this system, but just beat out Austin Mack for the starting quarterback job?
Yeah, look, it's a fascinating conversation, and to go back just to what you said at first, I think it's a lot easier when we're sitting here in February
Yeah.
for fans of teams to say, you know what, maybe the expectation could get lowered. Well, let me check in on your ass in November and see how it's going when we're during the year when you care more than you do right now. Even though a lot of people care the same all the way through the year, I think there's, like Meek Mill said, man, there's levels to it. Now, when it comes to Jalen Milroe, when we talked to Kalen DeBoer at the Senior Bowl, one of the questions that I wanted to hear him answer was his thoughts on personnel and transitioning to a place where you haven't got in exactly the type player you want to be able to run your system at the highest efficiency level. At Washington, you had a Joe Moore award-winning offensive line. You had your guys.
But first of all, the Joe Moore award-winning offensive line really wasn't that good when it mattered most.
Well, I think they punched above their weight all year. What I think the reason they won the Joe Moore award, and I think LSU's 2019 team was a little bit like this. I think you don't just win it because of run blocking. You win it because of pass protection. I think what Washington did, keeping Michael Penix upright, I mean, they were one of the top teams in the country in the sack given up rate. Now, look, when you get down to the playoff and you're facing the Globonauts, Avengers, and the Justice League from like Georgia and obviously Texas, who had a great pass rush. Just look what they did to Alabama, who I know wasn't the best offensive line. But bottom line is you had your guys in there. You had your 3 NFL wide receivers in there. The personnel fit the system. Well, anytime you're taking over a new place, even with the summer of love or the 70s freedom that we're getting in the transfer portal, it still takes time to get your guys in place. And he answered the question perfectly. He said, I will adjust my system to my personnel if I have to. That's why I think, Barrett, everybody would, you know how the saying goes, it'd be good if everybody waited tables for 3 months just to see, like how life works. I think everybody should have to coach high school for a year just to see, or 2 years and I know some high schools recruit, but you don't get to pick every player you have. You have to learn to adjust your system to the personnel that you get. And that's what Kalen DeBoer said. And now with Ryan Grubb gone and Scott Huff gone, the offensive line coach, it's going to be even more paramount that he adjusts that system to his personnel than it was before, because you have a new play caller as well. I mean, you got to put the guys in the best position possible. So Jalen Milroe is different than Joe Milton, Barrett. Joe Milton could only throw the fastball. He was a closer. I come in, I throw 102 miles per hour. I face 3 batters. That's it. You're not going 6 innings with Joe Milton. He can't make the routine throws routine. You can't put touch into somebody. I think Jalen Milroe has the ability, though, to grow as a passer, because there were times where he was layering balls in between. There were times where he was making the routine throws routine. Where I think Jalen Milroe will get into trouble is the same reason I think Dak Prescott and the Cowboys can't really do anything when it comes to the NFL in the playoffs, because they turned a guy that was a dual threat guy and tried to turn him into Drew Brees.
Yeah.
If the Cowboys would use Dak Prescott the way the Eagles use Jalen Hurts, right? And if Alabama will use Jalen Milroe, where he operates at the highest efficiency level, which is a threat with his legs, a threat with his arm, and you don't tell him to sit back in the pocket and just pick people apart. You play to his strengths, he'll be fine. I think Kalen DeBoer is smart enough to know that.
I do like how you mentioned the summer of love in relation to a team out of Seattle. I understood that reference.
Yeah, you see what I'm going. Look, I'm going to do the Chaz district next, so just get ready.
I like it. Yeah, I understood that reference. Like in the Avengers, I got it. Now, Colorado. Look, a lot of eyes were on Colorado and Deion, especially early in the season. And I've said, and I know you said as well, expect a regression to the mean. And that's exactly what happened. But Shedeur Sanders came out this week and said nobody handles adversity like him. I believe him, because he didn't have anybody blocking for him last year at Colorado and still seemed to survive, much less become an effective passer. With Deion and Shedeur this year and Colorado going to the Big 12, I'm not going to say they contend, because they're not going to contend. But can they make a bowl game?
Look, I think they can. I don't think people realize how deficient they were up front, really on both sides of the ball last year. And that's just a world. Look, man, you can't be a buffet and just serve sides, dog. Like, you got to have steak. You got to have chicken. You got to have burgers or hot dogs or something. I mean, Colorado was out there trying to play 7-on-7. That's what they were trying to do and find ways to manipulate that offensive line to be able to just have them hold up. And you see them getting guys like Jordan Seaton and what they've added through the transfer portal. I think Colorado will be better. When it comes to Shedeur Sanders, look, I got a lot of respect for Shedeur. But I really don't want to hear Shedeur Sanders talk to me about adversity when you're Deion Sanders' son, when you decided to skip the first team meeting so you and your brother could go to Fashion Week in Milan. Excuse me if I'm not going to cry a bucket full of tears about how much adversity you've had to face off the field. Now, when it comes to on the field, he was one of the biggest surprises of all last year for me. Not that I didn't think he was a good player, but seeing it translate so easily from the HBCU level to the Pac-12, when it was probably the best year the Pac-12 has had since I can remember, ironically being the last year they ever existed. But going into the Big 12, I think it fits their style of play a little bit more. And you bring back Travis Hunter. You bring back a lot of weapons, including your quarterback. I think Colorado will be better. I think a bowl game is probable. I would even put it as probable. But to say they're going to contend, I'm going to tell you who's going to win the Big 12 right now. And I typically don't do predictions this early, but it's going to be hard as hell for me not to pick Utah to win the Big 12.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And, I think back when they moved to the Pac-12, we had Kyle Whittingham on multiple times, and he said they weren't ready from a personnel perspective for 2 or 3 years. But now they are. Now that identity is set, they're in a Power 5, they're moving to the Big 12, which, I mean, by and large is pretty comparable to what the Pac-12 did become from a personnel perspective. So I wouldn't doubt that one bit. Although I'm not saying UCF is going to win it. I'm excited to see what Gus can do at UCF, not just this year, but moving forward, because I think that's a sleeping giant. Speaking of the state of Florida State, I thought Florida State would make the playoff before the season really had Jordan Travis not got hurt. They would have. But that was because they had continuity, right? You had a bunch of players like Jared Verse and some of these guys come back and say unfinished business. That's a lot like what happened with Clemson back in 2018, a lot what happened with Georgia in 2021. So that mindset is there, but all those players are gone. So I'm not going to ask about Florida State contending this year because we don't know. But because of that player turnover, do you buy Mike Norvell and Florida State as a consistent contender for the college football playoff in the new look ACC, which, let's be honest, the only team that scares me out of those three joining is SMU. But this is Florida State's conference, or it could be. Do you buy them becoming the juggernaut they were back in the early 2010s?
Well, I mean, it's Barrett, do I believe in Mike Norvell? Yes. Do I think that Florida State already went undefeated with, in all actuality, a bunch of transfers? If we're going to be honest, yeah, I thought it was one of the most impressive things that Mike Norvell did was being able to bring transfers in, kind of flip the roster, and then go out there and compete at a high level and have that cohesion, similar to what we've seen with some teams around the country. I mean, look at what Ole Miss is doing as well. But it's, if we're going to talk about a team that's going to perennially make the playoffs as long as Mike Norvell is there, I think so. I don't think Jordan Travis gets enough credit for as good of a quarterback as he was. But let's make no mistake, when Florida State gets cooking, they can get as hot as anybody. I mean, that's a brand that even today, right? Even through, I mean, they won a national championship with Jameis in 2013. It's not like it's so far removed from everybody's minds, like Nebraska, where kids are like, well, I don't remember watching Stunkhauser and Steinkooler, in the 90s.
That's like us remembering that Vandy was good.
That's exactly right. Yeah, like it's again, the kids nowadays, Florida State is still a hot brand. It's a sexy brand, right? In the days of NIL, Florida State can get going as much as anybody. Now you look at facility upgrades and things like that. That's a story for another day. But yes, Barrett, I believe, and you look at the ACC, Clemson isn't what they used to be, and I don't see Dabo changing anytime soon. Which that's a fascinating storyline of its own. Adding Cal and Stanford, this isn't a math contest, so I'm not worried about that. Rhett's done a great job at SMU. We'll see with Miami and Mario. I happen to be a believer in them because I think they're good enough up front. But yeah, that's the long way of answering. I think Florida State is here to stay because I think Mike Norvell is a damn good football coach. And I think they are upset down there in Tallahassee. And I think Mike Norvell has that genuine relationship with his players where, that adversity chip it's not manufactured. It comes off as genuine. You got screwed out of the playoff, man. I mean, let's call it what it is. Yes, the only thing I worry about is, you sat here and preach, hey, win and you're in, right? We handle business, then we're going to be in. Well, you got left out last year, but it's a 12-team playoff now. So, look, if Mike Norvell and Florida State's a stock, I'm keeping my money in it. I'm not selling it.
I am too. The ACC did up the patchouli level by adding Cal, so there's that.
Look, I mean,
Adding
yeah, you got to point and say, hey, we care about academics.
got those
Yay.
hippies too. Woohoo!
Yeah.
Yay,
Yay.
Cal! Yay, Cal!
Yeah,
Last
on the
thing.
West Coast. Let's put a school from Berkeley and Palo Alto in the Atlantic Coast Conference, and you wonder why we're the aliens won't talk to us.
The aliens were in Miami a couple months ago.
That's
so
exactly
you know how that
right.
goes.
And then they left.
Yeah, right. Last thing, and this is a really simple and a short question with a potentially long and complicated answer because I don't even know how to answer it at this point. Is Ryan Day on the hot seat?
Man, this is like one of the most nuanced situations ever. And a lot of people off the cuff say, oh, hot seat. No way. He's one of the top 5 winningest coaches in college football right now. You just went 11-2. I mean, it's a high class problem to have that Ohio State does. But like, I'm from Auburn, Alabama. I know what that Iron Bowl rivalry is.
You remember the Bill Curry days at
yeah,
Alabama.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's been a lot of guys that have won a lot of games, but didn't win the games they had to. When you sign up to coach at Auburn or Alabama, you understand that you have to win that game. Not every year, but you got to win your share of them. You can't lose a lot of them in a row. When you sign up to coach at Michigan or Ohio State, it's the same thing. Look, Jim Harbaugh was winning a lot of games at Michigan, but he couldn't beat Ohio State. All of a sudden, Urban Meyer leaves, and then he flips the script. Not that was the only reason, but it was a big reason. Yeah. And they're going to build a statue on top of a statue next to a statue of him. You can't on one hand say, listen, our rivalry's so good that we can go 1-11. But if that 1 is against our arch rival, it's a successful season. If you're going to say that, you can't then say, oh, well, look, we went 11-1. Even though we lost to our arch rival for the 3rd year or 4th year in a row, that's okay. Those two things cannot coexist. You knew what it was when you took the job. At some point, you have to beat Michigan. And if you don't beat them this year, when they've had their coach leave, their strength coach leave, their defensive coordinator leave, they're replacing all this personnel up front and at the skill position, including the quarterback and the best guys out wide and the best guys in the backfield, and you get them at home. If you don't beat them this year, I could understand maybe if it's not a fired, but it's in the arms of the angel. Just put them on the raft and just everybody's waving on the bank as you push them down the river. And who knows, maybe Eberflus or Wiener Goose or Beaver Moose or whatever his name is at the Bears, whatever Dr. Seuss character that is. Maybe he doesn't go great for him this year. And heck, Ryan Day, there's no Michigan in the NFL, but he is at the Chargers.
It's going to be fascinating. Let's just say Ohio State loses to Michigan, makes the playoff, and wins a national championship. Same thing would be for Alabama or Auburn or Michigan. The roles are reversed.
Well, Barrett, it's a legitimate question.
It could happen very easily.
Yeah. But if you're in Ohio, and here's the thing, Ohio State can end up playing Michigan 3 times.
Yep.
There's no divisions in the Big Ten. But honestly, Ohio State fans out there, real question. Would you rather, with all the circumstances being what they are this year, would you rather lose to Michigan and then win the national championship, only play them once, lose to Michigan and win the national championship, or beat Michigan and not win the national championship but make the playoff? I wonder which one they choose. I want to see y'all say y'all's rivalry's the best. That's all I hear about. Oh, it's the game. Oh, it's the game. I know which one Auburn fans and Alabama fans would choose.
Yeah.
Which ones would y'all?
Well, and here's the thing. What's the level in the playoff, right? If they lose to Michigan, make the playoff, don't win the national championship, but make it to that game or make it to the Final Four, but don't play Michigan in the playoff. That's where I want to know, okay, from a level perspective, where are we here? Like, how high up the ladder do you really need to be in order to be comfortable with where the program is right now?
My instinct, Barrett, tells me if you lose to Michigan and you only play them once, you better win the whole thing. That's what it feels like.
I don't know. If they lose the title game to Bama or Texas, I don't know. Is that enough? But off the cuff, I agree with you. But then you think about it and you're like, okay, if you don't play Michigan, but you get to the title game and lose, how can you not like that?
Again, were they okay with losing to Michigan, but almost beating Georgia in the playoff? I don't think they were happy. I think maybe if it was the first year you lost to Michigan, right, in a while, right, or maybe even the second loss in a row, you could get away with that. I think at this point, because they haven't got a ring, Barrett.
Yeah.
You've not only lost your rivalry game, That means you didn't make the Big Ten championship because you were both in the Big Ten East, and then you didn't win a national championship. You've got no ring. Frodo's got more rings than you in the last 3 years, and his little ass got one of them. So, like, at some point, you got to put a ring on that finger. You could have a situation where Ohio State loses to Michigan, but still wins the Big Ten. Yeah. Like, is that good enough to then get in the playoff and not win a national championship? So, like, it's the variables are all over. It's fascinating to keep up with.
It's going to be awesome. You know who does have a ring? I do. That Braves World Series ring back there.
That boy. Hey, I don't have one of them, but I was like, I'm with you. I'm a Braves fan, so I feel like I do have one of them. And I got a wedding ring and 3 state championship rings.
Ring night at Truist Park was a disaster. I'm just going to say.
Was it? Was it?
Oh my goodness gracious. That was total chaos. Worse than
I'd have dressed up like Gandalf or something just to throw people off.
That would have been awesome. Jake, appreciate it. Tell us a little bit about the show, when you can watch it and where you can watch it.
Definitely, man. Well, I appreciate you having me on. Yeah, it's Crain and Company. You can catch us. I mean, we're on YouTube, we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, dailywire.com. We go live each weekday morning, 7:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. Eastern. They want me to start using Eastern time now. Apparently, more people
6:30 God's time.
Yeah, 6:30 God's time. But if you can't catch us live, it stays on all those platforms all day. It's CRAINN Company. We take live calls and we have a live chat. If you like Barrett stuff, which I know you do because you're listening, I think you'll like ours as well.
Thanks, Jake. Appreciate it. And for those who have not subscribed to Daily Wire Plus, it's an investment you
Lady
will
Ballers,
not
Barrett.
regret.
Lady Ballers.
It was good. It was really good. Jake, appreciate it.
Thanks, Barrett.
Reminder, college football smothered and covered is brought to you by Coastal Vibe Vacations. If you're looking for a vacation rental this summer, Okaloosa Island between Destin and Fort Walton Beach, coastalvibevacations.com, 850-888-0515, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom condos. They have you covered. Coastalvibevacations.com. That'll do it for this edition of College Football Smothered and Covered. Really appreciate Jake Crain for hopping on. Really appreciate you for checking the show out. Episode 10, short infancy, still in the infancy of the new edition of College Football Smothered and Covered. If you haven't subscribed, check us out. YouTube, Rumble, Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts. Really appreciate you guys checking the show out. Share it. Leave a comment. Fully on board with constructive criticism. If you don't like something, let me know. If you do like something, let me know and leave a 5-star review. Enjoy your Tuesday. We'll talk to you later on in the week.